Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Bench Warmers. Here again with Harry Nostrand for Carolina Varsity. Harry, another great week of football here in the IMECK Football Conference, and just a great week of sports in general for the IMECK.
Yeah, very good week, and I think there's a lot of reason for all of us IMECK fans to be proud going into the playoffs, especially.
Really is our My Connection game of the week right here, the IMECSports.com pregame show. This is kind of our final week for that, wrapping up the My Connection portion. We will be on Carolina Varsity and IMECSports.com, and then as we get into the winter into basketball season, we may come back to My Connection, and hopefully those things work out. But last week, let's wrap up kind of the final week, Week 11, IMECK conference play, starting with Mallard Creek going to Huff.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was, Huff was able to put 14 points up on the board against them. Mallard Creek won 51-14. Dominant victory, and from all accounts, from what I heard, it wasn't even Mallard Creek's best performance. But it was a sloppy, cold night. It's hard to play good football in those type of conditions.
It really is. I mean, it was it was cold, rainy, wind blowing, not a lot of fun. But Mallard Creek finishes up a solid 10-0, 7-0 in the IMECK, number one seed coming out of our conference. So good year for them. Mooresville, the My Connection game of the week last week. Lake Norman traveled to Mooresville. And the final score makes it look like a lot closer game than it was. 37-21, Mooresville with the win, but really not quite that close of a game.
It was actually a pretty dominant performance by Mooresville. I mean, the starters came out when it was 34-7 late in the third quarter. 21 points on the board for Lake Norman in the fourth quarter against the Mooresville reserves. But I tell you, Mooresville had a relentless rushing attack. Michael Huntley, the backup running back, filling in for D. Tomlin, and he actually did pretty well. 177 yards on 15 carries and 2 touchdowns. Those are great numbers for a starter, let alone a backup.
He did pretty good. 177 yards on 15 carries. Anybody want to do the math real quick on that one?
I'm not going to bother. I know 2 55-yard touchdown runs is pretty good, though.
That's unbelievable. But, yeah, good night for them. Mooresville finishes up 8-2, 6-1 in the conference, number 2 seed overall. Lake Norman finishes up an impressive 4-6. They got back to playoff eligibility, finished up basically the number 5 seed in the conference. So great job for Coach McNeely and the guys to really turn that season around. Mooresville and Mallard Creek really showed up to be the 2 class programs, and Mallard Creek's on a whole nother platform. Mooresville and then the rest of the conference kind of fell in behind, but really good job for them. Next game, Vance at West Charlotte. This was the big pivotal game in the conference. We talked about it, last week on the pregame show, that whole lot riding on the Vance-West Charlotte ball game.
Yeah, it was a pivotal game as far as playoffs go. Vance with a win was going to claim third place in the conference outright. West Charlotte was looking for that 4th win to get playoff eligible, and pretty much turn the conference into just a mess. When it comes to deciding playoff teams, it was a close game. Vance ended up winning 26-20, which is it's expected between these 2 programs. But fortunately, it's a tough way to end the season for West Charlotte. It hasn't been the best season for them, but maybe positive things coming out of that program in the next year or 2 to come.
It really is, and for Vance, after the start to the season with the coach, being let go and then coming in as a consultant and kind of the turmoil they had to really put it back on track, and they have played some pretty consistent football for the last 4 or 5 weeks, which has been, good for that program. They finished the season 4-6 with dropping their endowment game. The records we are giving are minus endowment game, but really they put those wins together right here at the end of the conference run, and they've really started playing a little more consistent football. So really look for them to possibly do some good things in the playoffs. So.
Well, and the thing I want to point out with Vance is if you look at their non-conference schedule, they played a murderous non-conference schedule. I mean, they played Independence. I believe they played Butler. I mean, they played some great teams. They played Barry. I mean,
yeah, well, I should say Barry, Butler, Independence, and Providence. No, it wasn't Providence. Because they lost all 4.
Was it Garinger?
No, it wasn't Garinger. Apologize that we can't remember, but don't have their schedule right in front of me. But they had 4 really big non-conference games. Mm-hmm. Lost them all, came into conference play 0-4, lost a couple close ones early, lost to Mooresville, lost to Mallard Creek, which kind of everybody else did as well, so kind of expected. But then rolled off, basically 4 in a row to finish conference with a positive 4-3 in the IMECK. So they were above 500 in conference, so really good for them. West Charlotte ended up 3-7 on the season, 2-5 in the conference. So for them, a little bit disappointing, not a typical West Charlotte finish, but like I said, a little turmoil in that program and still some things happening there. So our final game was the next one that really had some implications. Hopewell at North Meck. Hopewell had to win to become playoff eligible.
Yeah, and this is, as we know, it's a rivalry game between North Meck and Hopewell. I believe Hopewell was the first school that got branched off from North Meck. Hopewell had a lot to prove this game. They wanted to go out, like you said, get that playoff eligibility win. They went out and took care of business.
They really did. 33-6, the final score for that ball game. What's impressed me is Hopewell, again, another program, didn't start the season real well. And a lot of people, early on, we're talking about the IMECK being down, IMECK being weak. Well, when you look at Vance and their coaching situation, the turmoil that caused, everybody forgets Hopewell did not hire their head coach until the 1st of July. So Coach Johnson did not get into the program until midsummer. Well, there's no time to gel and bond with the team, not to mention the fact that he brought an entirely different offensive philosophy to Hopewell. A lot of people don't give that a lot of credit anymore because they've forgotten about it. Chris Rust, when he was at Hopewell for all those years, they were 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They were a running football team. They played power, smash mouth football at Hopewell. The Titan name kind of was fitting. The Thunder Valley Stadium they play in. Everything about Hopewell was power football. Well, Coach Johnson comes in. He's a run and gun, spread offense, likes to throw it around, and brought his program with him. So all of a sudden now you've got kids that for years have been playing power football are being asked to spread it out, throw it around, and Hopewell took some time to adjust to that. The kids didn't completely buy into the system early on. Coaching staff was having to try to not only convince the kids that it would work, but really get to know the kids at the same time. Build trust, build confidence. A lot of things happen in that program that people don't give a lot of credit for, and I think their big turning point was the Mooresville football game.
Yeah, it really was. They played Mooresville really tough, and to be honest, they probably should have won that football game. I think they know in their minds and their hearts that was their game to win.
Yeah.
And that would have been the marquee win for that program this year. But I think just after the fact, even if it's a loss, you've discussed it before in Carolina varsity, that's a confidence booster right there. To hang with a team like Mooresville is this year, Mooresville is a good team. To hang with them and only lose them by 3 on a last-second field goal, that's a confidence booster. You could hang with the big dogs then.
And it really was. And what happened was those kids from that point on, they were already starting to buy into it. And you got to give Coach Johnson and his staff a little bit of credit too, because they took and backed up a little bit of their philosophy and took the Heath brothers and put a little power football back into Hopewell while keeping throwing the ball and keeping working the team. And so there was some give and take. The team started gelling with the coach and the coaching staff. And that program, since Mooresville, the confidence has been there that, hey, we can go out and win football games and really win football games big. And 33-6 over North Meck. Yes, North Meck's down this year, but still, that's a huge win because that's one of those games, kind of like the Mooresville game, where, when those two teams, strap it up, Mooresville, Lake Norman, North Meck, Hopewell, Vance, West Charlotte. There's a lot of passion, a lot of other things that go into the ball game. So really good for them. So really solid win, made them playoff eligible, and they were rewarded with a spot, which we will talk about after we come back from the break and set up the playoffs. But Hopewell was able to finish 4-6, 3-4 in conference, and the number 4 seed coming out of the conference, based on head-to-head wins over Lake Norman and Huff, which were the other two 4-6 programs, 3-4 in the conference. So setting it up, number 1 was Mallard Creek, 2 Mooresville, 3 Vance. They were the guaranteed spots going into the playoffs. Then Hopewell, Lake Norman, and Huff were all tied at 4-6, 3-4 in conference, based on head-to-head. Hopewell, then Lake Norman, then Huff. So that was 1 through 6, and then West Charlotte and Vance not eligible, down at the bottom 7 and 8 respectively. But all in all, good football for the IMECK conference this season. Really we ended up being just like we always are, beating each other up.
Yeah.
But the fact that we had 6 teams playoff eligible, 5 teams actually in the playoffs, speaks well for what the IMECK conference does and how they go about it every year. And, even on a down year, most conferences around the state could not compete in the IMECK conference. I mean, and there'll be a lot of people that hear that and go, oh, what about Southwest, Butler? What about, Richmond and Hoke and Scotland? And there's a lot of talk and a lot of fodder there for that. But, I stand by it that year in, year out, the IMECK is one of the toughest conferences to play in. So,
well, a lot of these teams from, other than the metro area, they don't know, I shouldn't say they don't know, but they're not used to competing with the athletes that Charlotte area football has. So you bring that and bring it to another conference and around the state, even like we were talking about, a North MEC team who's, yes, down this year, they're going to go and be competitive on the eastern side of the state just because of the athletes they do have.
Yeah. So a lot of things there. So when we come back from the break, we're going to set up this year's playoff picture, go through the 5 teams, and then we'll talk a little bit about the IMECK and volleyball, tennis, and soccer as well. So stay tuned. We'll be right back here with the IMECSports.com pregame show right here on My Connection. All right, welcome back to Bench Warmers. Joined here by Harry Nostrand from Carolina Varsity. I'm Joe Cullen. We're at Bench Warmers, our kind of home away from home now. You'll see us here each week. You can hear the batting cages going on in the background. Kids going at it, having fun. Basketballs bouncing on the basketball court. This is such a great facility for the area.
Yeah, I like it. And I was telling you before, if I had this when I was growing up, they would have had me paying rent here. I would have been here all the time.
I'm telling you, I would have had a cot in the back. It'd been like, I'm sorry, Mom, I'll be at Bench Warmers. Call me.
Right?
But, this place is phenomenal. We appreciate Rick and the guys for letting us come out and do the show here. So really appreciate them. Want to say thank you. And if you get a chance, come check out Bench Warmers. Great place. Batting cages, golf, basketball. You name it. There's lessons, pitching, catching, throwing. Pretty much anything you want to do sports related, it's here and you can do it. So come to Bench Warmers. Well, Harry, playoffs.
Favorite time of year.
We're here. Let's start with the IMECK and 4AA, which is the large schools in 4A. And you can't start at 4AA without number 1 seed, Mallard Creek, coming out of our conference 10-0. They will host South Mecklenburg.
It's kind of funny. As dominant as Mallard Creek has been this season, they did not get the overall number 1 seed in the western side of the bracket. Their pod, I should say, really doesn't show a whole lot of competition as far as Mallard Creek's concerned. South Meck, Mooresville faced them the second week of the season. I got a good idea what they're all about. Their whole thing's about ball control. They do a lot of wing formation. They're going to try to run the ball a lot. If Mallard Creek gets a hold of that ball, it's going to be a long game for South Meck, and it more than likely it probably will be. You hate to discount a team because this is a playoff, so they're there for a reason. But Mallard Creek shouldn't have a problem in this game at all. Yeah,
really, I made the comment to somebody else that asked me about Mallard Creek. I said, well, till they get to the West Regional, basically semifinal, they don't have any competition. It should look just like weeks 2 through 11. You take the Butler game out, Mallard Creek really hasn't been challenged at all. And unfortunately, as long as they play their game, and as Dale Ross said last week when he was here when we were setting up the brackets, if they take care of business, they shouldn't have anything to worry about. So really, Mallard Creek moving forward until they get to, maybe the semifinals or the regional finals, they're really not going to see any competition that should challenge them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
And the next team coming out of the IMECK, our 3 seed, Vance, will have to travel to Ardrey-Kell.
This game actually intrigues me a little bit. Vance got a lot of momentum heading into the playoffs. Ardrey-Kell's a real good team. They're 7-3 on the season. Their 3 losses are to Marvin Ridge, who's a really good 3A team, Weddington, who is also a very strong team, and they played Butler really close. They lost 43-40 to Butler, and if that's not a statement, I don't know what is. They also beat a very good Independence team. They're not a team to be taken lightly, but I'll tell you what, neither is Vance.
No, and that's what when I look at it, we talked about it a little bit before the break, how Vance has really kind of come back together. We didn't get to go into detail, but when you look at the Advanced program, started out the season on really shaky ground, but they put up points, even though their front season schedule was stacked. They put up points against everyone. And then when you look at how they got into conference and they, outside of Mooresville and Mallard Creek, really have taken care of business and really run over some teams here of late because they've started to gel and they've kind of got their confidence back. Their biggest Achilles going deep into playoffs will be their size. They really don't have a lot of depth.
No.
They're speedy, they're quick, they got good skill people. Honestly, the Ardrey game, to me, is a toss-up. I like Vance's opportunity. It would be a mild upset if Vance does win. There's no question about that. But I don't think it's out of the question.
It's not out of the question. If Ardrey comes into this game and they think they're going to walk away with it, they're in trouble because I'll tell you what, Vance will pounce on opportunities that they are given, especially, like I said, with momentum they've got heading into this game. It really is a toss-up. Either team could easily win, but, if the team that I feel that executes the best that night and limits the mistakes, they're going to walk away with the win.
Going to have a real chance. Vance is going to have to play good football. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they don't play good football, Ardrey will blow them out of the stadium. Because AK is going to come in and play good football. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So Vance has to play good football to have a chance. And if they can limit the mistakes and get a few breaks, really could do something here in the first round.
Most definitely.
Finally, our third 4AA game, sneaking in under the wire, Lake Norman gets to go to South Caldwell.
Looking at this game originally, I looked at the schedule of South Caldwell. They lost their first game of the season to Freedom, who having a very good season. Unfortunately, their season's been cut short. They were disqualified from the playoffs for an on-the-field fight. But I tell you what, since that loss to Freedom, which was, their first game of the season, they won 10 straight, and they have had 6 shutouts defensively, and they've given up 14 points once, 7 points twice, and then 19 points once. They're very good defensively, and if Lake Norman thought Mooresville had a good defensive squad, they're in for a whole new treat against South Caldwell.
Yeah, and that's just it. But the thing that I think benefits Lake Norman is South Caldwell is a very similar in style football team to Lake Norman. From what I understand, run a little bit more of a read option type offense, which Lake Norman, being a disciplined defensive football team, will benefit well because they can play at home, play their gaps, play their assignments, and play assignment football and have a chance to stay in this football game. It would be a huge upset if Lake Norman wins. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And really, the odds are long. Like I said before the break, I'm excited for Coach McNeely and the guys at Lake Norman. After the way that they started the year and everybody kind of wrote them off, that program's kind of been in a transition. As Coach Sherrill left, Coach McNeely took over and kind of rebuilding. And people talk about it. They don't have maybe the football athletes at the 4A level that some other schools might have. They tend to be more of a mountain kind of school or even a Mid-Eastern kind of school when it comes to athletes. So for them to get playoff eligible this year was a great accomplishment for them.
Sure, definitely, especially in this conference. Like you were talking about, they don't have the athletes that most of these other IMECK schools have. But I tell you what, there's discipline and execution-wise, as good as they are, if they can go in and execute and stay disciplined, like you said, do assignment football, defensively, I think they could probably stick with South Caldwell enough. My biggest concern is can they put points up on the board. Yeah. But we did see, against Mooresville, they were able to move the ball. They got a nice little running game there. But I really don't. I'm really not certain that Lake Norman can really pull it out in this one because South Caldwell really is Mallard Creek's probably only competition in that pod.
Well, like I posted on Carolina Varsity in a couple of the threads talking about the different games. Not that I'm biased to the IMECK or anything, but this is IMECSports.com that we're on, and we will be pulling for Lake Norman, for Vance, and all the schools out of the conference to win football games because we want to see them move forward. And, best of luck to the Wildcats in this first round game.
Most definitely.
Moving on to 4A, to the small 4A schools. First team we're going to talk about is our number 4 seed, Hopewell, that ended up the number 16 seed overall. They travel to TC Roberson.
Long trip up to Asheville, and depending on the weather, it makes it an even longer trip. This is a game, and call me crazy. Hopewell is not. I don't think they're out of this game one bit because you got to go up to Asheville to play this team, and as you know, teams from the mountains are generally bigger. They're big, strong kids. But what's the Achilles heel for a team like that? Speed. Hopewell's got speed, and you know what? They can utilize that, and an upset would not surprise me here at all, one bit.
Well, and honestly, even though from a seeding standpoint, TC a 4 seed, Hopewell a 16 seed, that has more to do with records. Honestly, I'm picking Hopewell in this ball game. And that's not being IMECK biased. That's looking at it from a standpoint that I really think Hopewell can get the job done. Based on where those kids have gone, the confidence they have in their ability to play the game now, what Coach Johnson has finally got them believing, I really think this is an opportunity for Hopewell to go tell some people, look, Titan football is back. So, it may be IMECK bias, maybe it is, but I'm telling you, that's a ball game right there that I'm looking for a 16 seed to go, hello, we're here. And then, because the next week, if they do win, Reynolds and Sun Valley are playing on that side of the bracket. They would have the winner of that game. And honestly, if AC Reynolds beats Sun Valley, Hopewell could end up finding Mooresville 2 rounds deep.
They really could. It's not out of the question. And I tell you what, Hopewell's gonna have a lot to prove. But like you're talking about, it's not out of the question. Sun Valley also in that other side of that you were talking about. They could also easily upset AC Reynolds. I'm telling you, these Asheville teams, they're not used to the speed that Hopewell and Sun Valley's going to bring to the table. And TC Robertson's already proved. They lost 42-0 to Asheville, a 3A school up there, who has a lot of speed. And speed kills these big teams.
It really does. And we'll talk a little bit more about Sun Valley in a second. But let's talk about our final school out of the IMECK. Your favorite, the Blue Devils from Mooresville, the number 2 seed out of the IMECK, ended up the number 5 overall seed at 8-2, hosting East Gaston.
East Gaston snuck in there in the last week of the season. They beat West Mecklenburg 22-20, getting them their 4th win of the season, playoff eligible, and their season continues for another week, possibly more. I'm not discounting any team at this point. It's playoffs; they're there for a reason, but the deck is definitely stacked against East Gaston in this game because they don't have a very big roster. I believe I was told they have like 27 kids on the roster. Not a big team. They've had to overcome a lot, especially off the field really this year. Dealing with coaching situations. Mooresville's kind of on a little roll as of late. It should be a good situation for Mooresville, but like I said, you can't discount East Gaston.
Well, especially considering Mooresville's track record of letdowns in the playoffs. Really needs to make something happen. So, looking for a good game out of Big Blue. They should be able to take care of business. But again, East Gaston, a flex bone type offense, could actually hurt Mooresville because Mooresville relies on brute strength and team speed on the defensive side of football. And both of those things, truthfully, can hurt you against an option read type offense, which East Gaston does a good job of running. So Mooresville's got to play very disciplined, and the guys that are used to flying around to the football have to stay at home and play their assignment or run the risk of being burnt pretty easily.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. A lot of these guys, we have a very strong, fast defense that like to get in there and just get the ball carrier. If they over pursue on some of these, there could be some long touchdowns for East Gaston. And, I'm definitely going with Mooresville in this game, but it wouldn't surprise me. I shouldn't say it shouldn't surprise me, but it would be a little bit of a mild surprise if East Gaston kept it close for a good portion of the game.
It really would. So that's kind of how the IMECK stacks up for playoff-wise in football. Huff in volleyball was our number 1 seed coming out. They lost in the sectional finals to Watauga, but we want to give the Lady Huskies a shout-out here on IMECSports.com for a good run. Them and Lake Norman both advanced deep into the state playoffs, so got to give them a lot of credit. In tennis, as we're filming this right now, Monday night, Halloween, Lake Norman is hosting Myers Park in tennis in the dual team championship, so still going deep there. And then the soccer brackets came out over the weekend, and the IMECK has 6 teams playing into the NCHSAA North Carolina High School Athletic Association playoffs. So really, we got our five seeds plus a wild card. Mooresville ended up being a wild card. Number 1 Huff will host Southwestern Conference 4 seed Audrey Kell. Number 2, Lake Norman will host Southern Carolina Conference Sun Valley. Number 3, Mallard Creek will travel to AC Reynolds. Number 4, Vance will travel to TC Roberson. Number 5, Hopewell will travel to Porter Ridge. And then Mooresville will travel to Watauga. So soccer being well represented out of the IMECK. Again, probably 2 of the top favored teams to win the whole tournament come out of our conference in Huff and Lake Norman. Huff, a phenomenal program, as well as Lake Norman. Huff ended the season 19-1-2. Lake Norman 17-2-4. Really, when you look at those 2 programs, unbelievably tough soccer programs.
Yeah, these are, I mean, and the best thing is these guys just don't like each other really either. As we talked about the rivalry, and, the fact that they're both really good squads just makes it even better.
Yeah, it really does. So it should be a lot of fun. But we're about out of time right here. We're at Bench Warmers, as we said. IMECSports.com pregame show. Harry, look forward to next week. Going to be a great week of football.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited. I wish Friday was here already. Got a couple more days, but it should be a fun conversation after this Friday.
It should be a lot of fun. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this on the IMECSports.com pregame show here on My Connection.